The baby kicked twice, hard, like she was trying to wake her mother from the cold that was slowly stealing both their lives. Caroline opened her eyes at 2:14 in the morning. Her breath hung in the air like smoke. Frost crawled across the inside of the windows, and her husband's side of the bed was empty, cold. He was in Minneapolis. Business trip, he said. Important conference. But here's what Caroline didn't know yet. At that exact moment, her husband Derek was lying in a hotel bed with another woman. And that woman, Vanessa, had just logged into Caroline's smart home system, had just deleted the heating controls, had just set in motion a plan to freeze a pregnant woman to death in her own home. Negative 22 degrees outside, no heat inside, 7 months pregnant, alone. This wasn't a malfunction. This wasn't an accident. This was attempted murder. But what Derek and his mistress didn't realize was that the same smart home system they use as a weapon was recording everything. Every login, every deletion, every digital fingerprint. And when the FBI started digging, they discovered something even more chilling than the cold that almost killed Carolyn. This wasn't Vanessa's first victim. 6 years earlier, another man had died. A car accident on an icy road. Brake failure. $1.5 million in life insurance paid to his grieving fiancée. The same fiancée who was now lying next to Derek Mitchell. What happens when a pregnant woman survives what should have killed her? What happens when she discovers her entire marriage was a lie? And what happens when she decides to fight back against the people who tried to take everything from her? Stay with me until the end, because this story has twists you won't see coming, betrayals that will make your blood run cold, and an ending that proves one thing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't hate, it's survival. This is the story of Caroline Mitchell, and it starts with the coldest night of her life. The baby kicked twice, hard, as if trying to wake her from the cold that was slowly stealing her life. Carolyn Mitchell opened her eyes at 2:14 in the morning. Something was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. Her breath hung in the air like smoke, visible even in the darkness of the bedroom. Frost had begun to form on the inside of the windows, delicate patterns of ice that would have been beautiful under any other circumstances. The cold had seeped through the down comforter, through the flannel sheets, through her thick winter pajamas, straight into her bones. Her fingers were stiff, her toes were numb, and her baby, her precious baby girl at 7 months gestation, was moving frantically inside her swollen belly. Carrie reached for Derek's side of the bed. Empty. The sheets were cold, had been cold for a long time. He was in Minneapolis for a work emergency, left yesterday morning, kissed her forehead at the front door, told her to rest, to take care of herself, to take care of their baby, said he loved her, said he'd be home by Friday. She tried to sit up, but her body felt sluggish, heavy, like moving through molasses. Every movement required conscious effort. The baby kicked again, more frantically now, tiny fists and feet pressing against the walls of her womb. 28 weeks, her daughter was fighting to get her mother's attention, fighting to wake her up, fighting perhaps to save both their lives. Carrie fumbled for her phone on the nightstand. Her fingers were so stiff she knocked it to the floor twice before managing to grip it. The screen lit up, painfully bright in the darkness, and she squinted at the weather app. Negative 22 degrees outside. The coldest night of the year in Minnesota. The kind of cold that killed people. The kind of cold that froze pipes and stopped cars and turned exposed skin to frostbite in minutes. Inside, the smart thermostat app showed nothing. Blank, empty. The heating system icon that should have been there, the one that let her control the temperature from anywhere in the house, was gone. Not turned off, not set to a lower temperature, not malfunctioning, deleted. The entire heating system had been removed from her smart home account. That made no sense. No sense at all. Carrie swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet hit the hardwood floor, and the cold shot through her like electricity. She gasped, her breath coming out in a visible cloud. Grabbed the nightstand for balance. Her legs felt weak, unsteady, like they belonged to someone else. She made it to the hallway thermostat mounted on the wall outside the bedroom. The screen was dark. Dead. She pressed the power button. Nothing. Pressed it again, holding it down. Nothing. Pressed every button on the DV app, her frozen fingers fumbling over the controls. Nothing happened. The thermostat was completely unresponsive. The furnace was silent, no hum of the motor, no whoosh of warm air flowing through the vents, no clicking of the igniter, nothing. Based on how cold the house had become, it hadn't been running for hours. Maybe since she'd gone to sleep at 10:30, maybe longer. Carrie tried to call Derek. Her fingers were shaking so badly she had to try 3 times to tap his contact. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Straight to voicemail. His voice, warm and familiar and suddenly strange, asking her to leave a message. She tried again. Voicemail, again, voicemail, again, voicemail. The baby kicked, harder this time, insistent, urgent. Carrie's mind raced. She needed to get warm, needed to protect her baby, needed to do something, anything, before the cold took them both. She dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, trained to handle panic. Carrie tried to match that calm, but her voice came out thin, trembling, barely above a whisper. My heat is off. I'm pregnant. 7 months pregnant. It's negative 22 degrees outside. I can't feel my feet anymore. I can't feel my fingers. The baby is moving a lot. Too much. I think something is wrong. The dispatcher's voice sharpened immediately. Ma'am, what's your address? Carrie gave it, watched her breath fog in front of her face while she talked. The frost on the windows was getting thicker. She could see ice crystals forming on the mirror above her dresser. Help is on the way, ma'am. 15 minutes. Can you get to a warmer location, a neighbor's house, your car? My car is in the garage. The garage is attached. I'd have to go outside to get to it. Don't go outside. Is there a room with better insulation? A bathroom, maybe? The bathroom, yes. The bathroom had heated floors. Derek had installed them last year as a surprise for her birthday. And the bathtub. Hot water. Steam. I can get to the bathroom, Carrie said. I can run hot water. Do that, ma'am. Stay on the line with me. Help is coming. Carrie stumbled down the hall to the master bathroom. The tile floor was ice cold, but she barely felt it anymore. Her feet had gone past cold into numbness. She turned on the hot water in the bathtub. The pipes groaned, protested, then finally released a stream of blessedly warm water. Steam rose immediately, beautiful and warm and life-saving. She climbed into the bathtub fully clothed, flannel pajamas and all. The warm water soaked through the fabric, surrounded her legs, her belly, her frozen arms. She pulled the shower curtain around her like a blanket, creating a small tent of warmth and steam. The baby finally stopped kicking so frantically. The movements became gentler, calmer, as if her daughter knew they were safe now, as if she understood that help was coming. Carrie counted the minutes, counted her breaths, counted the tiles on the bathroom wall, 17 across, 12 down, 204 tiles. 204 tiles while she waited to find out if she and her daughter would survive the night. The paramedics found her still in the bathtub, a man and a woman in heavy winter jackets, their faces red from the cold, flashlights cutting through the dark house. They wrapped her in thermal blankets, silver and crinkly and strange, carried her to a stretcher, wheeled her through the frozen house and out to the ambulance. The cold outside hit her like a physical blow. Even wrapped in blankets, even surrounded by paramedics, she felt the negative 22 degrees trying to reach her, trying to finish what it had started. In the ambulance, surrounded by beeping monitors and IV bags and the warm hands of medical professionals, Carrie heard fragments of their conversation. Core temp 94 degrees, moderate hypothermia. Lucky she woke up when she did, another hour, maybe less. Fetal heart rate was irregular when we found her, stabilizing now. Who turns off heat in this weather? System malfunction? Doesn't look like it. The thermostat was completely dead, like someone shut it down remotely. That last exchange made Carrie's already cold blood run colder. Shut it down remotely. Someone. But who? Who would shut off her heat in the middle of the coldest night of the year? Who would risk her life, her baby's life, for what? At Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Patricia Holloway took over her care. The doctor was in her early 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun and hands that moved with decades of confidence. She stabilized Carrie's temperature with warmed IV fluids and heated blankets, monitored the baby's heart rate with a continuous fetal monitor strapped to Carrie's belly, asked questions that seemed strange. "Caroline, does anyone else have access to your smart home system?" Carrie blinked. Her brain was still foggy from the cold, still processing the trauma of the past few hours. "Just me and Derek, my husband." "Why?" Your Holloway's expression shifted. Just slightly, a flicker of something that looked like concern or maybe suspicion. "The paramedics said your heating system wasn't malfunctioning. It was deleted, remotely. Someone logged into your smart home account and removed the entire heating control system." The words didn't make sense. Deleted remotely. Someone logged in, but the only people with access were her and Derek was in Minneapolis. And why would anyone delete a heating system in the middle of winter? Why would anyone want to freeze her to death? "That's impossible," Carrie said. Her voice was stronger now, warmer but still trembling. "It must be a glitch, some kind of software error. These systems malfunction sometimes. Derek is always complaining about bugs and updates." Dr. Holloway nodded slowly, but her eyes remained concerned. "I'm sure you're right, but the hospital IT specialist is going to take a look at your phone, if that's all right. Just to document what happened, for the records, for the insurance claim, if nothing else." Carrie handed over her phone. She was too tired and too cold and too confused to argue. The baby's heartbeat was steady on the monitor beside her, a rhythmic whooshing sound that meant her daughter was alive and safe. That was all that mattered right now. Everything else could wait. She closed her eyes, listened to her daughter's heartbeat, felt the warmth slowly returning to her body, and tried not to think about who might want her dead. When she opened them again, Dr. Holloway was back. But she wasn't alone. A woman in a dark blazer stood beside her, badge on her belt, gun at her hip, hard eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Mitchell," the woman said, "I'm Detective Margaret Sullivan, Minneapolis Police Department. We need to talk." The cold that had almost killed Carrie was nothing compared to the chill that ran down her spine when she saw the look in the detective's eyes. Something was very, very wrong. And Carrie had a terrible feeling that her nightmare was only beginning. Detective Margaret Sullivan pulled a chair close to Carrie's hospital bed. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. Interviewed hundreds of victims, delivered hundreds of pieces of bad news. She was in her late 40s, with short gray hair that looked like she cut it herself and eyes that had seen every kind of human cruelty imaginable. She held a tablet in her hands, and she kept glancing at it like it held secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to share. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask you some questions about last night, about what happened with your heating system." Carrie nodded. The monitors beeped steadily beside her. The baby's heartbeat whooshed in a comforting rhythm. Her temperature was back to normal, 98.6, the numbers glowing green on the display. Physically, she was recovering. But something in the detective's tone, something in the way she held that tablet, made Carrie's stomach tighten with dread. "The hospital eye specialist examined your phone," Detective Sullivan said. "Your smart home system, the one your husband installed, logs everything. Every change, every adjustment, every deletion, every access point, every device that connects. We know exactly when your heating system was removed from your account." "When?" Carrie asked. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant, like it belonged to someone else. 11:47 p.m. last night, about 2.5 hours before you woke up." Carrie did the math. She'd gone to sleep around 10:30. The heating system had been deleted about an hour later. By the time she woke up at 2:14, the house had been without heat for nearly 4 hours, in negative 22-degree weather. The temperature inside had dropped from a comfortable 68 degrees to somewhere in the 40s, maybe lower. Cold enough to cause hypothermia, cold enough to threaten her pregnancy, cold enough to kill. "Someone logged into your account from an IP address in Minneapolis," Detective Sullivan continued. Her voice was carefully neutral, professionally detached. "The Marquette Hotel, room 412. Carrie felt the blood drain from her face. The monitors beside her beeped faster, tracking her rising heart rate, her increasing distress. Derek is in Minneapolis, she'd said. The words came out as barely more than a whisper. He's staying at the Marquette. That's where his conference is. That's where he always stays when he has business in the city. Detective Sullivan nodded. She didn't look surprised. She looked like someone who had already put the pieces together and was just waiting for Carrie to catch up. Do you know anyone who might want to hurt you, Mrs. Mitchell? Anyone who might have a reason to want you dead? The question was absurd. Carrie was an interior designer. She spent her days picking out paint colors and furniture arrangements and fabric swatches. She helped people choose between hardwood and carpet, between modern and traditional, between bold and subtle. She didn't have enemies. She had clients who sometimes complained about pricing and timelines, but that was the extent of her conflicts. No one in her life wanted her dead. No one could possibly want her dead. No, she said, no one would want to hurt me. There must be some mistake. Maybe Derek accidentally deleted something while he was checking the system remotely. He does that sometimes, checks the cameras and the thermostat when he's traveling, makes sure everything is working. Maybe he pressed the wrong button. Maybe there was a glitch. Even as she said the words, she knew they didn't make sense. Derek was meticulous, careful. He wouldn't accidentally delete an entire heating system. And even if he had, he would have noticed immediately. He would have fixed it. He would have called her to make sure she was okay. Unless he didn't want to fix it. Unless he wanted her to freeze. Carrie did what she always did when she couldn't process information. She counted. The ceiling tiles above her bed, 12 across, 8 down, 96 tiles. 96 tiles while her world quietly, systematically fell apart. The door burst open before Detective Sullivan could respond. Donna Brennan swept into the room like a force of nature, like a storm that had been building for 4 hours and finally reached its destination. 58 years old, retired nurse, silver hair cut short and practical, eyes that could see through lies like glass. Carrie's mother had driven 4 hours through the snow from Wisconsin, through icy roads and blinding flurries and temperatures that could kill. She'd driven the moment she got the call from the hospital, the moment she heard that her daughter was in danger. "Where is he?" First words out of her mouth. Not, "How are you?" She could see how her daughter was, pale, frightened, hooked up to monitors and IV lines. Alive, thank God, but shaken in a way that went beyond the physical. "Minneapolis," Carrie said. "Work emergency. He's presenting at a conference on Thursday." Donna's face hardened, her jaw set, her eyes narrowed. She set down her overnight bag and crossed her arms over her chest. "I called his office on my way here, talked to his assistant, a woman named Patricia, very helpful." Her voice dripped with something that wasn't quite sarcasm, something darker. "There's no emergency. There's no conference. Patricia said Derek took 3 personal days starting Monday. Didn't tell anyone where he was going or why." The monitor beside Carrie beat faster, her heart rate climbing. 90, 95, 100. "That can't be right," Carrie said, but her voice wavered, cracked. "He showed me the conference registration, the hotel confirmation. He's presenting on Thursday. A paper about software security protocols. He's been working on it for months." "I don't know what he showed you," Donna said. Her voice was hard, certain. The voice of a mother who had never trusted her son-in-law and was now being proven right. "But I know what his assistant told me, and I know my son-in-law is a liar." Carrie opened her mouth to defend Derek, to explain that there must be some misunderstanding. But the words wouldn't come, because pieces were clicking together in her mind. Pieces she'd been ignoring for months, maybe longer. The late nights at the office that stretched into early mornings. The new cologne that smelled expensive and unfamiliar. The gym membership he'd suddenly become obsessed with 6 months ago, transforming his body with a dedication she'd never seen before. The phone he kept face down on every surface, screen hidden from view. The way he smiled at text messages when he thought she wasn't looking, then quickly put the phone away when she walked into the room. I knew. Somewhere deep inside, I knew. I just didn't want to see it, didn't want to believe it, didn't want to be that wife. The suspicious one, the paranoid one, the one who checked her husband's phone and questioned his every move. Detective Sullivan stood. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to step out and make some calls." Verify some information. I'll be back in a few minutes. She left, and Carrie was alone with her mother and the steady beeping of machines and a growing sense that everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, her husband, was wrong. Terribly, devastatingly wrong. Donna sat on the edge of the bed, took her daughter's hand, held tight. Her grip was strong, warm, anchoring. "Tell me everything," she said, "from the beginning. Everything that's happened. Everything you've noticed. Everything you've been afraid to say out loud." So Carrie did. The cold, the deleted heating system, the IP address in Minneapolis, the questions that didn't make sense, the signs she'd been ignoring, the feeling she'd had for months that something was wrong in her marriage but couldn't quite name. When she finished, Donna was quiet for a long moment. Her hand never let go of Carrie's. Her eyes never wavered. Then she said, "I never liked him, you know. From the very first time you brought him home for Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Something about his smile. Too practiced, too perfect, like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror. Like he knew exactly what expression would make people trust him." "Mom, please. Not now. I'm not saying I told you so. I would never say that. But I am saying I should have said something sooner. Before you married him, before you got pregnant. I kept my mouth shut because you were happy, and I didn't want to ruin that happiness. But maybe if I'd spoken up, maybe if I'd told you what I saw." She trailed off. There was nothing more to say. Speaking up wouldn't have changed anything. Carrie had been in love. Deeply, completely, blindly in love with Derek Mitchell. And love, she was learning, could make you see what you wanted to see, could make you ignore what you didn't want to face, could blind you to the monster sharing your bed. Detective Sullivan returned 20 minutes later. She wasn't alone this time. A man in a dark suit walked beside her. Tall, broad-shouldered, with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen decades of human darkness. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is FBI agent Raymond Tate. He's taking over the investigation." FBI. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Carrie's mother gripped her hand tighter. The monitors beeped faster. "Why is the FBI involved?" Carrie asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Agent Tate stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured, the kind of voice that delivered catastrophic news professionally, the voice of someone who had learned to separate himself from the horrors he witnessed. "Mrs. Mitchell, the IP address we traced belongs to the Marquette Hotel, as Detective Sullivan told you. Room 412 is registered to your husband, but Derek wasn't the one who logged into your smart home account." Carrie frowned. "I don't understand. If the login came from his hotel room, the login came from a second device, a laptop connected to the same hotel Wi-Fi network, but registered to a different person." Agent Tate paused. His eyes held something that might have been sympathy or pity. "A woman named Vanessa Hartley. Does that name mean anything to you?" The name hit Carrie like a physical blow, like a fist to the stomach, like the cold that had nearly killed her. Vanessa Hartley. She knew that name. She knew that woman. Vanessa worked at Derek's company, software development department, mid-level engineer. Carrie had met her at the company Christmas party 3 years ago. Young, maybe 26 at the time. Pretty in an obvious, almost aggressive way. Long, dark hair that fell in perfect waves. Designer clothes that showed off her figure. A laugh that was too loud, too practiced, designed to draw attention. She'd laughed too loud at Derek's jokes that night, had touched his arm too often, had looked at him with eyes that held something more than professional interest. Carrie had noticed, had felt a flicker of unease, but Derek had dismissed it. "Vanessa's like that with everyone," he'd said. "She's just friendly. It doesn't mean anything." "She's just a co-worker," Carrie said now. But even as the words left her mouth, pieces were clicking together. Derek's late nights, the new cologne, the gym obsession, the phone face down, the business trips to Minneapolis that had started 8 months ago, the distance that had grown between them, the feeling that her husband was slipping away, piece by piece, and she couldn't figure out how to hold on. "I knew, somewhere, somehow, I knew. I just didn't want to see it." "Mrs. Mitchell," Agent Tate said gently, "we believe Vanessa Hartley logged into your smart home system from your husband's hotel room and deleted your heating controls." Given the temperature outside your pregnancy and the deliberate nature of the deletion, the district attorney is considering an attempted murder charges. Murder. The word echoed in Carrie's mind, bounced off the walls, settled into her bones like the cold that had almost killed her. Her husband's mistress had tried to murder her, had tried to freeze her to death in her own home, had tried to kill her baby. Donna made a sound, low, guttural, primal, the sound of a mother's rage. "There's more," Agent Tate continued. His voice remained steady, professional, but his eyes held something that looked almost like anger. "We found something else in your smart home logs. Someone has been accessing your security cameras for the past 4 months, watching you, learning your schedule, your routines, when you sleep, when you wake, when you're home alone." 4 months. Someone had been watching her for 4 months. Through the cameras Derek had installed to keep her safe. Through the system he'd set up to protect their family. The baby kicked. Once, twice. A reminder that she was still there. Still alive. Still fighting. "We're going to find out exactly what happened," Agent Tate said. "And we're going to make sure the people responsible pay for what they did. Both of them. Both of them. Derek and Vanessa, her husband and his mistress. The man she'd married and the woman he'd chosen over her." Carrie nodded. She couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Could only hold her mother's hand and feel her daughter move inside her and try to process the fact that her entire life had been a lie. They left her alone after that, just for a little while. Carrie asked for 10 minutes of quiet, 10 minutes to process, 10 minutes to try to make sense of the senseless. Her mother stepped into the hallway with Agent Tate, their voices low and urgent through the closed door. Carrie lay in the hospital bed and stared at the ceiling. 96 tiles. She'd counted them 3 times now. 96 tiles that had become her anchor, her meditation, her way of keeping her mind from spinning into chaos. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby moved, a foot maybe, or an elbow, a tiny limb pressing against the wall of her womb. A tiny person she didn't know yet. A tiny person she might never have gotten to know if she hadn't woken up when she did. She thought about the house, the beautiful 4-bedroom colonial she and Derek had bought 2 years ago, right after they got married. The house they were supposed to raise their family in. The house with the smart home system Derek had insisted on installing when she got pregnant. For safety, Oshafi had said. His voice had been so earnest, so concerned, so loving. "So we can monitor the baby's room from anywhere, check the locks when we're not home, control the temperature remotely if we need to, make sure our little girl is always safe." The temperature, remotely, control. The irony was so dark, so twisted, so horrifically perfect that it might have been funny under any other circumstances. The system he'd installed to keep her safe was the system he'd used to try to kill her, or the system his mistress had used. Did it matter which one of them had pressed the button? Carrie closed her eyes and let the memories come. She couldn't stop them anymore. Couldn't keep them locked away in the corner of her mind where she'd been shoving them for months. She remembered their wedding day, 2 years ago last September. A perfect autumn afternoon with golden leaves and warm sunshine and guests in their Sunday best. The way Derek had looked at her as she walked down the aisle. Tears in his eyes, his hands trembling as he took hers, his voice cracking when he said his vows. "I promise to love you, to cherish you, to protect you for as long as I live." She thought those tears were tears of joy, tears of love. Tears of a man overwhelmed by his good fortune in finding her. Now she wondered if they were something else entirely. Relief, maybe? That his plan was working, that his target had taken the bait, that his mark was walking down the aisle toward him, blind and trusting and completely unaware. She remembered the moment she'd told him about the pregnancy, standing in their kitchen on a Sunday morning in June, holding the positive test like a trophy, like a miracle, like the beginning of everything she'd ever wanted. His face had lit up. His arms had wrapped around her. He'd lifted her off the ground and spun her around, laughing, crying, promising to be the best father in the world. Now she wondered if what she'd seen was panic, fear, the realization that his timeline had just gotten more complicated. Because he already had Vanessa by then, didn't he? Already had his escape plan in motion, and a baby changed everything. A baby meant custody battles and child support and 18 years of financial obligation. A baby meant he couldn't just walk away clean unless the baby never existed, unless the mother was gone before the baby could be born. Carrie pressed her hand harder against her belly, felt her daughter move in response. Strong, alive, fighting. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I'm so sorry I brought you into this, but I promise, I will never let anyone hurt you. Never again." The door opened. Agent Tate entered, followed by a younger man in a rumpled suit. Thomas Crawford, he introduced himself. FBI digital forensics specialist. He had wire-rimmed glasses and tired eyes and the look of someone who spent more time with computers than people. "Mrs. Mitchell, we've been analyzing the data from your smart home system. There's a lot to go through, but we found some things you need to know about." He set up a laptop on the rolling table beside her bed. The screen showed a complex interface, lines of code and timestamps and IP addresses. "Your smart home system is more extensive than you probably realize," Crawford said. His voice was gentle, almost apologetic. "Your husband installed hidden cameras, not just the security cameras you knew about, the ones in the living room and kitchen and nursery, others, secret ones." Carrie felt cold again. Not the cold of hypothermia, a different kind of cold, the cold of violation. "Where?" she asked. But she already knew, already felt it in her bones. "In the bedroom, in the bathroom, in your home office." In the bedroom where she slept, where she changed clothes, where she and Derek had been intimate, where she'd lain awake at night worrying about her marriage, wondering why her husband seemed so distant, so distracted, so different. In the bathroom, where she showered, where she stood naked in front of the mirror, examining her changing body as pregnancy transformed her, where she'd cried sometimes, hormones and loneliness overwhelming her. In her home office, where she worked on client projects, where she talked to herself while designing, working through problems out loud the way she always had, where she'd confided in Meredith during video calls about her fears and doubts and the growing distance in her marriage. Someone had been watching. Every intimate moment, every vulnerable second, every private thought spoken aloud to an empty room that wasn't empty at all. 4 months of footage, Crawford continued. His voice remained gentle, but his eyes were hard with anger. Thousands of hours, all stored on a cloud server. Registered to Vanessa Hartley. 4 months since early January, since right around the time Derek had started going to the gym obsessively, right around the time he'd bought that new cologne, right around the time the distance between them had grown from a crack to a chasm. "She's been watching you," Agent Tate said quietly. "Learning when you sleep, when you wake up, when you're home alone, what time you leave for appointments, what time you come back, your entire routine documented and analyzed." Carrie thought about all the times she'd walked naked from the shower, all the times she'd talked to herself while doing dishes, working through problems out loud the way she always had. All the times she'd cried alone in the bedroom because Derek was working late again, and she felt so lonely, so scared, so uncertain about the future. All the times she'd stood in front of the mirror and wondered if she was still attractive to her husband, if the pregnancy weight made him see her differently, if she was losing him somehow and couldn't figure out why. Someone had been watching, cataloging, planning, using her most vulnerable moments to map out her life, to find the perfect time to kill her. The thought made her want to vomit, made her want to scream, made her want to tear down every camera in that house with her bare hands. Instead, she sat very still and let the information settle into her bones. Let the horror become something solid, something she could hold, something she could use. The footage was accessed regularly, Crawford said, sometimes multiple times a day. Vanessa Hartley wasn't just watching, occasionally, checking in from time to time. She was obsessed, studying your every move like a scientist studying a specimen. Donna, who had come back into the room at some point, made a sound, low and angry and primal, the growl of a mother protecting her young. "I want to be there when you arrest them," Donna said. Her voice was ice, pure, cold, deadly ice. "Both of them. I want to look them in the eye and watch them realize what they've done. Agent Tate didn't respond to that. Instead, he looked at Carrie. His eyes held something that might have been admiration or respect, or simply the acknowledgement of a woman who was holding herself together when she had every right to fall apart. There's more, he said, hidden in the metadata of those camera recordings, synced to the same cloud account. We found text messages between your husband and Vanessa Hartley. 6 months of communication, planning, strategizing. He paused. Let the words sink in. Would you like to know what they say? Carrie looked at her mother, at the FBI agent, at the ceiling with its 96 tiles. She thought about the life she'd built with Derek, the home they'd created, the baby they were supposed to raise together, the future she'd imagined, full of first steps and first words and birthday parties and family vacations. All of it was a lie, every moment, every memory, every dream, and she needed to know exactly how deep the lies went, needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal, needed to see the monster clearly so she could fight it. Tell me everything, and she said, I need to know. Agent Tate pulled out his tablet. The text messages between Derek and Vanessa spanned 6 months, from early December to the present. Hundreds of messages, thousands of words, a complete record of their conspiracy. He scrolled through them slowly, selecting portions to read aloud. Carrie listened with her hands folded over her belly, protecting her daughter from words that couldn't physically hurt her, but somehow felt dangerous anyway. Poisonous, like the cold that had seeped into their house. January 15th, Agent Tate read, Derek to Vanessa. Quote, she suspects nothing, too focused on the baby, spends all her time looking at nursery furniture and reading parenting books and asking me to feel the baby kick. It's almost sad how trusting she is. Like a puppy that doesn't know it's about to be put down. Carrie's stomach lurched. Put down. Like an animal. Like something less than human. She remembered January 15th. They'd been shopping for the nursery that weekend. She'd shown Derek a crib she loved, white with delicate scroll work, and he'd smiled and said it was perfect. Said their daughter would sleep like a princess in it. Said he couldn't wait to hold their baby for the first time. And then he'd gone home and texted his mistress about how trusting his wife was, how pathetic, how easy to deceive. February 3rd, Agent Tate continued, Vanessa to Derek, quote, life insurance situation? Derek's response, handled, increased to $2 million. She signed without reading the fine print, just asked where to put her signature and went back to her laptop. Didn't even ask why I wanted to increase it. Just trusted me, like always. $2 million. Carrie remembered that day too. Derek had come home with a stack of papers. Insurance updates, he'd said. Standard stuff. Just needed her signature in a few places. She'd been in the middle of a client presentation, stressed and distracted, and she'd signed where he pointed without really reading anything. Trust. She'd trusted him. With her life, with her baby's life, with everything. March 19th, Agent Tate read, Derek to Vanessa, quote, once the baby is born, it gets complicated. Custody or child support, 18 years of financial obligation. Lawyers, courts. Her mother would fight for that kid like a wolf. We need to handle this before the baby comes, before everything gets messy. Handle this, like she was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed, a mess to be cleaned up before the baby arrived. Donna made a sound, something between a wob and a growl. Her hand gripped Carrie so hard it hurt. April 7th, Agent Tate continued, Vanessa to Derek, quote, the smart home system is perfect for what we need. Everything can be controlled remotely. Temperature, locks, cameras, no physical evidence. No trace back to us if we're careful. I've been studying her schedule through the cameras. She's so predictable. Same routine every day. It's like she wants to make this easy for us. The smart home system, the cameras, the schedule she followed every day because routine felt comforting, felt safe, felt like stability in a marriage that was quietly falling apart. She'd been so predictable, so easy to study, so easy to kill. May 2nd, Agent Tate read. His voice had grown quieter, heavier, as if the words themselves weighed him down. Derek to Vanessa, quote, found the perfect weekend. Weather forecast shows -15 to -25 for Friday night through Sunday. I'll be in Minneapolis for cover. She'll be alone in the house, 7 months pregnant. The heat goes off at midnight. By morning, it'll look like a tragic system malfunction. Pregnant woman freezes to death while husband is out of town. No one will suspect anything. Accidents happen. The room was silent. Even the monitors seemed to hold their breath. Carrie felt something shift inside her. Something fundamental. The shock was wearing off, and in its place came something else. Something harder. Something that felt like rage but was colder, more controlled, more dangerous. They had planned her death, discussed it casually, timed it carefully. Chosen the coldest weekend of the year to maximize their chances. Talked about her freezing to death like they were planning a vacation. I want to see them, she said. Her voice was steady, calm. The voice of a woman who had passed through shock and grief and was arriving somewhere new, somewhere harder. I want to see the rest. All of it. Agent Tate hesitated. Mrs. Mitchell, there's more. A lot more, Lau, and it gets worse. I need to see it. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Who I'm dealing with. He nodded slowly, handed her the tablet. She scrolled through the messages herself. Read the words her husband had written to his mistress. The jokes they'd made about her, the complaints about her body changing with pregnancy, the mocking observations about her trust, her predictability, her pathetic belief in their marriage. Derek had called her boring. Vanessa had called her an obstacle. They'd laughed about how easy she was to fool, how she never questioned his late nights, how she believed every lie he told. And then, buried in the messages, she found something else, something that made her blood run cold. A link to a news article from 6 years ago about a man named Marcus Webb, wealthy software developer, engaged to a woman named Vanessa Hartley, died in a single-vehicle car accident 3 months after their engagement ended. Brake failure on an icy road. Derek's message, are you sure this won't be traced back to us? Your last situation got a lot of attention. Vanessa's response, different state, different method, different timeline. I've learned from my mistakes. This will be clean. Carrie looked up from the tablet. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. She's done this before. Agent Tate nodded. We believe so. The Marcus Webb case was investigated as an accident. No charges were ever filed, but we're reopening it now. She killed her ex-fiancé for his life insurance, and now she was going to kill me. That's what the evidence suggests. Carrie thought about the woman she'd met at that Christmas party 3 years ago. The too loud laugh, the too bright smile, the way she'd touched Derek's arm and looked at him like he was something she wanted to consume. She'd dismissed Vanessa as a flirt, a harmless office distraction. Nothing to worry about. She'd been so wrong. So dangerously, catastrophically wrong. I'm not crazy. I'm not paranoid. I'm the survivor of something planned and evil. Something calculated and cold and designed to end my life. The door opened. Meredith Cole burst in like she'd run the whole way from their office. Carrie's best friend and business partner, 34 years old, practical and fierce, and loyal to a fault. I came as soon as I heard, Meredith said, rushing to Carrie's side. Oh, I'm crying. Oh, honey. Oh, my God. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Carrie nodded, accepted the hug, let Meredith's warmth and worry wash over her. I brought your laptop, Meredith said when she finally let go. And some clothes. And this. She held up a thick folder. I couldn't sleep after you called, so I started digging. Social media, news archives, public records, everything I could find on Vanessa Hartley and Derek. She spread the papers on Carrie's hospital bed, printouts of Instagram posts, Facebook photos, LinkedIn profiles, news articles, the story of Marcus Webb laid out in black and white, the engagement announcement, the sudden breakup, the fatal accident, the life insurance payout, $1.5 million, paid to Vanessa Hartley, who had still been listed as beneficiary because they'd never updated the paperwork. She's a serial killer, Meredith said flatly. That's what this is. She finds wealthy men, seduces them, and kills them for money. And Derek was helping her. Agent Tate was already on his phone, stepping into the hallway to make calls. The case had just gotten much bigger than an attempted murder. This was potential serial homicide. This was national news. Carrie looked at the photo of Marcus Webb, a smiling young man with his whole life ahead of him. Dead at 32 because he'd had the misfortune of falling for the wrong woman. She thought about her baby, about the life growing inside her, about how close she'd come to ending up like Marcus Webb. "I'm not going to let them get away with this," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I'm going to help you catch them, whatever it takes, whatever you need from me." Agent Tate returned to the room. His expression was grim, but determined. "We have a plan," he said, "but we're going to need your help. Derek doesn't know you survived. As far as he knows, his plan worked. We want to keep it that way until we're ready to arrest him." "What do you need me to do?" "Talk to him, on the phone. Pretend everything is normal. Make him think you are still at risk so he comes home expecting to find a tragedy." The thought made Carrie's stomach churn, talking to Derek, pretending she didn't know, playing the trusting wife one more time, while her husband waited for news of her death. But she understood why it was necessary, why they needed to catch him off guard, why the element of surprise was crucial. "I can do that," she said. "Tell me what to say." The FBI spent 2 hours coaching Carrie on what to say and how to say it. They practiced different scenarios, different questions Derek might ask, different ways the conversation might go. Thomas Crawford set up recording equipment, 2 backup systems in case one failed. Every word would be documented, analyzed, potentially used as evidence in court. Agent Tate went over the rules one more time. Keep it natural. Don't volunteer too much information. Let Derek do most of the talking. Listen for any slip-ups, any admissions, any hints that he knew more than he should. "He's going to ask about the heating system," Agent Tate said. "He has to. That's what he's waiting to hear about. Be vague. Say it was a glitch. Say it's being fixed. Don't give him any reason to think you suspect anything." Carrie nodded. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. The rage she felt had settled into something cold and controlled, something useful. Derek called at 8 p.m., right on schedule. His voice came through the speaker of Carrie's phone, warm and concerned and perfectly calibrated to sound like a devoted husband. "Babe, I just saw a news alert about the cold snap hitting Minnesota. -25 last night. Are you okay? Is the house warm enough? I've been worried about you all day." Carrie wanted to scream, wanted to tell him she knew everything, wanted to ask him how he could do this to her, to their daughter, to the life they were supposed to build together. Wanted to hear him try to explain the inexplicable. Instead, she followed the script. "I'm fine." She kept her voice light, casual, the voice of a wife who trusted her husband completely, who had no idea he'd tried to kill her. "The heating system was acting weird last night, but it's working now. I actually stayed at Mom's just to be safe." A pause on his end, too long, too careful. She could almost hear him recalculating. "It was acting weird how?" he asked. His voice was still concerned, but there was something underneath, an edge of tension, of anticipation. "Just turned off by itself around midnight. I woke up and the house was freezing. Probably a software glitch. The tech guy is coming tomorrow to check it out." "That's really strange." Another pause. "I should fly home early. I don't like you being alone when the house is having problems, especially this pregnant." "No, don't. Your conference is important. I know how hard you've worked on that presentation." "I'm fine. Really. Mom is here. She's staying until you get back." "Are you sure? I could get an earlier flight. Be home by tomorrow night." "Positive. Focus on your work. The baby and I are perfectly safe." They talked for 10 more minutes. He asked about her doctor's appointments scheduled for Thursday, about whether she'd picked a paint color for the nursery, about what she wanted for dinner when he got home. Normal conversation, husband and wife talking about their life, about their future. He told her he loved her. The words came out smooth, practiced, perfect. The words of a man who had rehearsed them so many times they'd lost all meaning. She said it back. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. When she hung up, Carrie barely made it to the bathroom before she vomited. Her body rejected the performance, rejected the lies, rejected the pretense of normalcy with the man who had tried to murder her. She sat on the cold tile floor and pressed her back against the wall. Her hands were shaking now, trembling with rage and revulsion, and something that felt like grief. Grief for the marriage she'd thought she had, for the husband she'd thought she knew, for the life that had been revealed as nothing but smoke and mirrors. She counted her breaths. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. The technique her therapist had taught her 5 years ago for managing anxiety. She'd never imagined using it to recover from a conversation with the man who tried to kill her. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed them against her belly, feeling her daughter move, and forced herself to breathe. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. Slowly, gradually, the shaking stopped. The nausea faded. The rage settled back into something cold and controlled. Agent Tate found her in the bathroom doorway when she finally emerged. His expression was grim but satisfied. "You did well," he said. "Very well." He didn't suspect anything. "I noticed his pauses," Carrie said. Her voice was hoarse from vomiting, but steady. "When I mentioned the heating system, when I said I stayed at my mom's, he was checking, trying to figure out if his plan worked." That's exactly what he was doing. And now he thinks it failed, but that you don't suspect anything. He thinks it was just a glitch, that he can try again. The thought made Carrie's blood boil. Try again. He was already planning the next attempt, already thinking about how to finish what he'd started. "When are you arresting him?" she asked. "Tomorrow, when he comes home. We want him to walk into what he thinks is the aftermath of his crime. Let him think he succeeded. Then take him down." Carrie was discharged from the hospital the next morning. Core temperature normal, baby healthy, all vital signs stable. Physically, she was fine. Mentally, she was something else entirely. Something harder, something that had been forged in the fire of betrayal and was now cooling into steel. She went to her mother's house, the 2-story colonial in the suburbs where she'd grown up, where she'd learned to ride a bike, had her first heartbreak, dreamed about the life she would build someday. The house should have felt safe. It didn't. Nowhere felt safe anymore. That night, alone in her childhood bedroom while her mother slept down the hall, Carrie couldn't sleep. She opened her laptop and started searching. Vanessa Hartley's social media presence was extensive. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. A carefully curated image of a successful young professional living her best life. Carrie scrolled through years of posts, found Derek in some of the photos, tagged at company events, group shots at holiday parties and team outings, professional distance maintained. Nothing obviously romantic, but the older photos told a different story. Vanessa and Derek at restaurants, candles on the table, wine glasses raised, at concerts, her leaning into him, his arm around her shoulders. A beach vacation that Carrie recognized, Mexico, last March. Derek had told her it was a team-building trip, just coworkers, nothing to worry about. She'd been feeling insecure about her growing pregnancy belly, about the weight she was gaining, about whether she was still attractive to her husband. He'd assured her she was beautiful, perfect, the sexiest woman he'd ever known. And then he'd flown to Mexico with his mistress. There were bikini photos, sunset photos, one photo of Derek kissing Vanessa's cheek, her eyes closed in contentment. The caption reading, "Paradise with my person. Paradise with my person." While his pregnant wife sat at home, feeling fat and insecure and wondering why her husband seemed so distant. Carrie screenshot everything. The FBI would want it, but she kept looking. She needed to see it all, needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal. She found a photo of herself. Vanessa must have downloaded it from Carrie's public social media. The pregnancy announcement she'd posted 2 months ago. Her and Derek holding up a pair of tiny baby shoes, both smiling at the camera, looking like the picture of happy, expectant parents. Vanessa had edited the photo, added text in bright red letters across Carrie's face. Temporary problem. Temporary problem. That's all she was to them. An obstacle to be removed. A problem to be solved. A woman to be frozen to death so they could collect her life insurance and live happily ever after. Carrie closed the laptop, sat in the dark, her hand on her belly. The baby moved, a gentle flutter, a reminder that she wasn't alone, that something good had come from the wreckage of her marriage. "You're not a problem," she whispered to her daughter. "You're the only good thing left. And I promise, with everything I have, I will never let anyone hurt you. We're going to survive this. Together." Derek Mitchell landed at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport at 11:43 on Thursday morning. Carrie knew the exact time because Agent Tate was feeding her updates through a secure text channel. Subject has landed, proceeding to ground transportation. Subject in Uber, ETA to residence, 22 minutes. Subject approaching neighborhood, all units in position. Subject, that's what Derek was now, not husband, not father of her child. Subject, a target, a criminal about to be caught. Carrie was at her mother's house, watching through a secure video feed that Thomas Crawford had set up on her laptop. The cameras in her house, the same cameras that had been used to spy on her, were now being used to monitor Derek's movements. The irony wasn't lost on her. Agent Tate sat in a surveillance van parked 1 block from the Mitchell house. 2 other agents were positioned in a home across the street, borrowed from neighbors who had been told only that an ongoing investigation required their cooperation. Local police had the surrounding blocks locked down, ready to move on command. Everything was in place. All they needed was for Derek to walk into the trap. Carrie watched the video feed as Derek's Uber pulled up to the curb, watched him step out of the car, overnight bag slung over his shoulder, phone in his hand, probably texting Vanessa, letting her know he was home, letting her know it was time for the next phase of their plan. He looked normal, relaxed, like a man coming home from a business trip, ready to see his wife and unborn child, not like a man who had just committed attempted murder. That's what made him so dangerous, Carrie realized. His ability to wear the mask, to play the role, to lie with every word and gesture and expression. She'd never seen through it, not once in 3 years. Derek unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Carrie watched him through the security cameras as he looked around. The thermostat was repaired, working normally, maintaining a comfortable 68 degrees. The house was warm, clean, undisturbed. Not what he was expecting. He pulled out his phone and sent a text. The FBI was monitoring his communications, so they saw it immediately. "Everything looks fine here. No police, no investigation. I think we're clear. The glitch story must have worked." Vanessa's response came 30 seconds later. "Perfect. That's a relief. Delete this thread. I'll see you next week, and we'll figure out our next move." Their next move. They were already planning another attempt, already thinking about how to finish what they'd started. Derek deleted the messages, started to relax, set down his bag, looked around the house he'd expected to find as a crime scene. He was confused, Carrie could tell, confused and relieved and already recalculating. The heating system failure hadn't killed his wife. She was still alive, still at her mother's house, still trusting him completely. He would have to try again. Different method, different timing, but he would try again. She knew that now, knew it with absolute certainty, unless he was stopped. Derek called her an hour later. His voice was warm, loving, relieved. "Hey, babe, I'm home early. The conference ended ahead of schedule. Where are you?" "At Mom's. I told you I was staying here until the heating system got checked." Right. Is everything okay with it now?" "The tech came this morning, said it was a software glitch. Something about the automatic update conflicting with the system settings. Everything's working fine now." "That's a relief. I was worried about you. About both of you." A pause. The pause of a man who was very good at lying. "I'll start dinner. What time will you be home?" "An hour maybe. Traffic might be bad." "Don't rush. Rest. I'll have everything ready when you get here." Carrie hung up and looked at Agent Tate's latest text. 6 o'clock. We move at 6. Through the video feed, she watched Derek cook. He made chicken parmesan, her favorite, set the table with their good china, lit candles, chilled a bottle of wine for himself, sparkling cider for her because she was pregnant and couldn't drink. He hummed while he worked, checked his phone occasionally, smiling at whatever he saw, probably texts from Vanessa. Probably making plans for the future they'd build once Carrie was out of the way. Then he'd slide the phone into his pocket, face down, and go back to preparing a beautiful romantic meal for the wife he'd tried to murder. Carrie watched him check his phone one more time, watched him smile, watched him type a response, watched him slide the phone into his pocket, face down, always face down. She used to find it mildly annoying, a small quirk, not worth mentioning. Now she knew why. Now she understood what he'd been hiding. Every smile at his phone had been a betrayal. Every late night had been a lie. Every I love you had been a performance. The arrest happened at 6:17 p.m. Agent Tate knocked on the front door. Carrie watched through the video feed as Derek set down a cooking spoon and walked to answer it. He was wearing an apron. Her apron. The one with the silly saying about kiss the cook that her mother had given her as a housewarming gift. He opened the door expecting his wife. He found the FBI instead. Derek Mitchell. Agent Tate's voice was calm, professional, final. FBI, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder in the first degree. The wooden spoon clattered to the floor. Derek's face cycled through emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, fear, and then finally something that looked almost like resignation, like he'd known somewhere deep down that this moment was coming. I don't understand, he said. But his voice was weak, unconvincing, the voice of a man who understood perfectly but was still trying to play the role. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you. They cuffed him in his own foyer, read him his rights while the chicken parmesan burned on the stove, let him out of the house he'd shared with his wife, past the candles he'd lit for the romantic dinner that would never happen. In Minneapolis, simultaneously, another FBI team arrested Vanessa Hartley at her apartment. She didn't go quietly. She screamed, claimed innocence, demanded a lawyer, tried to run. The evidence on her devices told a different story. The text messages, the camera footage, the metadata, everything documented, everything preserved, everything ready to be used against her in court. Back at her mother's house, Carrie watched the video feed until it was over. Watched them put Derek in the back of a police car. Watched them drive away with the man she'd married, the father of her child, the person she'd trusted most in the world. Then she closed the laptop and sat very still in the gathering darkness. She'd thought she would feel something when they arrested him. Satisfaction, relief, justice. Instead, she felt hollow, empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside her and left nothing but empty space. Her mother found her like that an hour later, sitting in the dark, hand on her belly, staring at nothing. It's over, Donna said quietly. They got both of them. It's over. But Carrie knew it wasn't. Not really. The arrests were just the beginning. Now came the hard part, the investigation, the trial, the testimony, learning exactly how much her husband had betrayed her, and somehow, impossibly, putting her life back together from the ashes. Agent Tate came to Donna's house the next morning to debrief Carrie on what they'd learned from the interrogations. He brought coffee and a thick folder full of documents and a look on his face that suggested the news wasn't going to be good. Derek is talking, he said, settling into a chair across from Carrie in her mother's living room. He hasn't stopped talking since we brought him in. Vanessa, on the other hand, isn't saying a word. Her lawyer shut down the interview immediately. But Derek won't stop. What's his story? Carrie asked. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, absorbing its warmth. The baby moved inside her, a gentle reminder of why she was fighting. His version is that it was all Vanessa's idea. He claims she seduced him, manipulated him, controlled him, that he never meant for anyone to get hurt, that he loves you, that he loves your baby. Carrie's laugh came out harsh, broken, the sound of something shattering. He loves me. That's what he said? That he loves me? He cried during the interrogation multiple times, begged us to let him explain to you, said it all got out of control, that Vanessa pushed him into it, that he never thought she'd actually go through with the plan. He signed off on every text message. He increased my life insurance to $2 million. He installed cameras in our bedroom and bathroom. He picked the coldest weekend of the year because it would maximize the chances of killing me. But he loves me. I know, we know, his story doesn't hold up. The evidence is overwhelming, but scared people say things. And in the process of trying to minimize his involvement, Derek has revealed things he probably didn't mean to. Agent Tate opened the folder, spread documents across the coffee table. The affair didn't start 8 months ago, he said. It started 2 years ago, before you were engaged, before you were even seriously dating. The words hit Carrie like a physical blow. 2 years, their entire engagement, their entire marriage, their entire pregnancy, all of it shadowed by his betrayal. He targeted you, Agent Tate continued. His voice was gentle but unflinching. That's what the evidence shows. He identified you as a mark, your family's money, your trusting personality, your recent loss of your father, which made you vulnerable. He approached Vanessa with a proposition: help him seduce, marry, and eventually inherit from a wealthy woman. They'd split the proceeds. Carrie felt the room spin. Her mother grabbed her hand, anchoring her. The wedding, she whispered. The romance, the pregnancy, all of it. Part of a long con, yes. She thought about Derek's proposal, on a beach in Hawaii at sunset, with a photographer he'd hired to capture the perfect moment. She'd cried. He'd cried. She'd thought it was the most romantic thing that had ever happened to her. Now she realized it was a business transaction, an investment, a calculated move in a game she hadn't known she was playing. He married me for the money, she said flatly. My family's money, the trust my father set up. That's what the evidence suggests. He thought if he married you and you died, he'd inherit everything. The trust, your business, your life insurance. But he made a mistake. He didn't read the fine print. The charitable provision. Exactly. Your father was a smart man. He set up the trust so that if you die before accessing the funds, the money goes to charity. Not to your spouse. Not to anyone who might have incentive to hasten your death. Carrie almost smiled at that. Her father protecting her even from the grave, seeing possibilities she'd never imagined. So killing me wouldn't get him the trust money. No, he found that out about 6 months ago, according to what he's told us. That's when they started planning the alternative. The life insurance. $2 million, enough to start over with Vanessa, enough to build the life they wanted without the inconvenience of a wife and child. There's more, Agent Tate said. He pulled out another document. Vanessa cracked this morning. Her lawyer negotiated a deal. She'll testify against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. She talked? For 3 hours. What she said confirms everything and adds details we didn't have. He handed Carrie the transcript. She read it with trembling hands. Vanessa's confession was clinical. Detached. The account of a woman who had done this before and saw no reason for emotion. Derek had approached her 2 years ago with what he called a business opportunity. He'd researched Carrie for months before making his move. Knew about her family money, her design business, her father's death, her romantic nature. They divided responsibilities. Derek handled the seduction, the marriage, the appearance of a devoted husband. Vanessa handled the research, the planning, the technical details. They met in secret, communicating through encrypted apps, building their case file on Caroline Mitchell. The cameras, the schedule analysis, the life insurance increases, all of it documented, all of it planned. But Vanessa had her own agenda. Marcus Webb wasn't an accident. She'd tampered with his brakes, made it look like a malfunction, collected his life insurance, got away with murder. When Derek came to her with his plan, she saw an opportunity. She'd help him eliminate Carrie. Then once things settled down, she'd eliminate Derek. She already had a life insurance policy on him, already had plans for how to make it look accidental. Derek thought he was running the show, Agent Tate said. But Vanessa was playing him the whole time, using him to get to your money, planning to take his cut once you were dead. He was as much a mark as you were. 3 predators, all circling each other, and Carrie had been caught in the middle. That night, after Agent Tate left, after her mother went to bed, Carrie sat in the backyard. It was cold, maybe 12 degrees. But she needed to feel the air, real air, not the recycled warmth of the house. She wrapped herself in blankets and sat on the old wooden swing her father had built when she was 7. The chains creaked, the wood groaned. But it held her, just like it always had. She didn't cry. She'd expected to, had been waiting for the tears to come, for the dam to break, for the grief to overwhelm her. But the tears wouldn't come. Instead, she felt something else. A terrible clarity, the fog of her marriage lifting, every lie illuminated. For 2 years, she'd been married to a stranger, a con artist, a would-be murderer. Every kiss had been a calculation. Every tender moment had been an act. Every "I love you" had been a line in a script. She thought about all the times she'd doubted herself, all the times she'd pushed down her instincts because she didn't want to be suspicious, all the times she'd told herself she was being paranoid, insecure, unfair to her husband. Her instincts had been right. Her gut had known. And she'd silenced it because she wanted the fairy tale to be real. I survived. My baby survived. And now I know the truth. That's more than most victims get. She sat in the cold until her mother came out to bring her inside. Then she went to bed and, for the first time since the nightmare began, slept without dreams. 3 weeks after the arrest, Caroline Mitchell gave birth. The labor started at 4 in the morning, contractions building slowly from discomfort to pain to urgency. Her mother drove her to the hospital, navigating icy roads with the focused determination of a woman who had already almost lost her daughter once and wasn't about to let anything go wrong now. Meredith met them at the hospital, having broken several traffic laws to arrive in time. She held Carrie's hand during contractions, wiped sweat from her forehead, told her she was strong and brave and that everything was going to be okay. 12 hours later, at 4:22 in the afternoon, Elizabeth Grace Mitchell came into the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Healthy lungs that announced her arrival with a cry that echoed off the delivery room walls. Perfect. Carrie held her daughter for the first time and felt something she hadn't expected. Peace after everything that had happened, after all the betrayal and horror and near-death experiences. Here was something pure, something good, something that had nothing to do with Derek and his lies. She named her Elizabeth after her grandmother, who had died when Carrie was 12, but whose kindness and strength she still remembered. And Grace, because that's what Carrie was choosing. Grace in the face of horror. Grace despite everything. Her mother was there. Meredith was there. The room was full of flowers and balloons and cards from clients and friends who had heard about her ordeal and wanted to show their support. No one from Derek's family came. His mother, Grace Mitchell, had sent a letter the week before. Half apology, half accusation. I don't know what happened or what Derek did, but I know you must have done something to push him to this. No son of mine would do such things without reason. Carrie had burned the letter without finishing it. She had no room in her life for people who blamed victims for the crimes committed against them. The hospital room was quiet now. Late evening. Elizabeth slept in her arms, a warm weight against her chest. 12 hours old. Carrie hadn't slept at all, but she wasn't tired. She was something else. Something that felt like wonder. She looked at her daughter's face. Derek's chin, her own eyes. A mix of two people, one of whom had tried to end this child's life before it began. It would have been easy to hate Elizabeth for looking like her father. Easy to see Derek's features and feel revulsion, disgust, rage. Some people might have understood if Carrie had struggled to bond with a baby who reminded her of the man who tried to kill her. But she didn't, couldn't. Elizabeth was her daughter, her own person, not responsible for her father's sins. "I'm going to tell you the truth someday," she whispered, watching her daughter sleep. "When you're old enough to understand, I'm not going to lie to protect him. I'm not going to pretend he was a good man who made mistakes. But I'm also going to tell you about me, about how we survived, about how we chose to live anyway." Elizabeth stirred, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. "You're going to know your grandmother," Carrie continued, "and your Aunt Meredith, and all the people who love you. You're going to have a good life, a safe life, I promise you that. Whatever else happens, I promise you that." The nurse came in with paperwork, birth certificate forms, father's name section. Carrie hesitated only a moment. Then she wrote, "Derek Allen Mitchell, incarcerated." The nurse didn't blink. She'd worked in the maternity ward for 15 years. She'd seen everything. 1 month later, February, The cold finally broke. Temperatures climbed above freezing for the first time since December. The snow began to melt. The world started to thaw. Carrie moved into a new apartment, 2 bedrooms on the 6th floor of a building with big windows that let in lots of light. She'd chosen it specifically for those windows. After nearly dying in the dark and cold, she wanted brightness, wanted to wake up every morning with sunshine on her face. There was no smart home system in the new apartment, no connected thermostats or cameras or locks, just basic deadbolts and her own 2 eyes. Some things didn't need to be smart. They just needed to work. Meredith had kept their interior design business running during the chaos. Clients had been understanding when they learned about Carrie's situation. Some had been more than understanding. The story had made the news, though Carrie's name had been kept out of it at her request. A lot of people were rooting for the pregnant woman who survived. She went back to work when Elizabeth was 6 weeks old, part-time at first. Her mother handled childcare, coming over every morning with breakfast and staying until Carrie came home in the afternoon. It was a gift beyond price. The gift of time, the gift of trust, the gift of not having to do this alone. The first client meeting was terrifying. A full home redesign for a young family in the suburbs. Carrie's hands shook through the entire presentation. Her voice wavered when she explained her design concept. She kept waiting for someone to ask about her personal life, to recognize her from the news coverage, to look at her with pity. No one did. They listened, they asked questions, they nodded at her suggestions. And when she finished, they said they loved her vision. "There's something different about you," the wife said afterward. "I can't put my finger on it, but you seem like someone who really understands what a home should be. What makes a space feel safe?" Carrie almost laughed. She understood what a home shouldn't be. That's what she really understood. What it felt like to have your sanctuary turned into a weapon. What it meant to lose the place you thought was safe. But she was learning what a home should be too, learning it with Elizabeth, with her mother, with Meredith. Learning that safety wasn't about smart technology or security cameras. It was about the people who loved you. The people who would drive 4 hours through a snowstorm to be by your side. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. The thought came to her one morning while she was feeding Elizabeth. Sunlight streaming through the windows, her daughter's eyes locked on hers. A moment of perfect peace in the middle of chaos. She wrote it on a sticky note. Put it on her bathroom mirror. Read it every morning when she woke up and every night before she went to sleep. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. In May, 3 months before the trial was scheduled to begin, Carrie received a visitor she never expected. The doorbell rang at 9:15 on a Saturday morning. Elizabeth was napping in her crib, the baby monitor glowing green on the kitchen counter. Carrie was enjoying a rare moment of peace, drinking coffee and watching the spring rain streak down the windows of her new apartment. She wasn't expecting anyone. Meredith was at a design conference in Chicago. Her mother had called earlier to say she'd stop by around noon. The mailman didn't ring the bell. Carrie set down her coffee and walked to the door, looked through the peephole, and froze. Grace Mitchell stood on her doorstep. Derek's mother, the woman who had sent that hateful letter 3 months ago, the letter that blamed Carrie for driving her son to attempted murder. The letter Carrie had burned without finishing because she couldn't stomach another word of victim blaming from the woman who had raised a monster. Grace looked nothing like the confident, dismissive woman Carrie remembered from family dinners and holiday gatherings. She looked older than her 64 years, thinner as if she'd stopped eating properly. Her silver hair, always perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse against her chest like a shield. Carrie's first instinct was to walk away, to pretend she wasn't home, to let this woman stand on her doorstep until she gave up and left. But something made her hesitate. Something in the slump of Grace's shoulders. Something in the way she stood, small and broken, nothing like the proud mother who had always defended her son against any criticism. Carrie opened the door. Grace's eyes widened as if she hadn't expected Carrie to answer, as if she'd been prepared for rejection and didn't know what to do now that it hadn't come. "May I come in?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, rough, as if she'd been crying. Please, I need to speak with you. I know I don't deserve your time. I know I said terrible things, but please, just give me 10 minutes. Carrie studied her former mother-in-law for a long moment, looked for signs of deception, of manipulation, of the same smooth charm Derek had wielded so effectively. She found none. Just a broken woman standing in the rain, asking for forgiveness she probably didn't deserve. She stepped aside. Grace entered the apartment slowly, looking around at the space Carrie had created. The big windows, the warm colors, the photos of Elizabeth on every surface, the complete absence of anything that reminded her of Derek. It's beautiful, Grace said softly. You always had such wonderful taste. Sit down, Carrie said. Her voice was neutral, guarded. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she was willing to listen. Grace perched on the edge of the sofa like a bird about to take flight. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She didn't touch the tea Carrie offered. I need to tell you something, she said, about Derek, about who he really is, about who he's always been. She paused, struggling to find words. And I need to apologize for the letter, for everything I said, for everything I failed to see. Carrie sat in the armchair across from her, said nothing. Let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Grace's story unfolded slowly, painfully, like pulling threads from a wound that had never properly healed. Derek had always been different, she said, from the time he was a toddler. Other children cried when they hurt someone accidentally. Derek watched their tears with curiosity, as if studying a scientific phenomenon. Other children felt guilty when they lied. Derek lied so smoothly, so naturally, that even his own mother sometimes couldn't tell the difference between truth and fiction. She'd seen signs throughout his childhood, the way he manipulated his father into giving him things by playing on his emotions, the casual cruelty towards smaller children, always explained away as rough play. The dead animals she'd found behind the garage when Derek was 8, their bodies arranged in neat rows like specimens in a collection. She'd told herself it was normal. Boys were curious about death. Boys were competitive and aggressive. Boys would be boys. She'd been wrong. When Derek was 12, a neighborhood girl accused him of pushing her into a creek because she wouldn't give him her bicycle. The girl nearly drowned. Derek said she'd slipped. His father believed him. His teachers believed him. His friends believed him. Grace wanted to believe him. But that night she'd found Derek in his room, looking at photos of the girl on his computer, smiling. She'd never told anyone, never confronted him, never gotten him help. She'd buried the incident in the back of her mind and told herself it was nothing. Told herself her son was normal. Told herself that every mother had moments of doubt about their children. Years passed. Derek grew into a charming young man, handsome, successful, popular. He dated beautiful women and impressed powerful men and climbed the corporate ladder with ease. Grace told herself she'd been paranoid, that her fears were unfounded, that her son was everything he appeared to be. Then came Sarah. His first serious girlfriend, Grace said. Her voice had dropped to barely a whisper. They met freshman year of college. She was a sweet girl from Ohio, kind, trusting. A lot like you, actually. Carrie's stomach tightened. They dated for 2 years. I thought they might get married. And then, senior year, Sarah had an accident. Grace's hands twisted in her lap. She fell down a flight of stairs at Derek's apartment building, broke her arm, 3 ribs, suffered a concussion that gave her headaches for years afterward. Let me guess, Carrie said flatly. Derek said it was an accident. He said she'd been drinking, said she'd stumbled at the top of the stairs, and he'd tried to catch her but couldn't. Said it was tragic but not his fault. And you believed him. I believed him. Grace's voice cracked. Even when Sarah told the police he'd pushed her, even when she said they had been arguing about him flirting with another woman and he'd shoved her down the stairs, even when her parents begged me to listen to their daughter, I believed my son. The silence that followed was thick with decades of denial and regret. Sarah transferred to another school, Grace continued, dropped out eventually. I heard she had anxiety so severe she couldn't leave her apartment for years. Her parents tried to press charges, but without witnesses, without evidence, The police said there was nothing they could do. And you never asked Derek about it. I asked him once, just once. He looked at me with those cold eyes and said, "Mom, do you really think I'd hurt someone I loved?" And I said no, because I didn't want to think it, because thinking it meant everything I believed about my son was wrong. Grace pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbed at eyes that had been crying for months. Then came his first wife. Carrie sat up straighter. His what? His first wife, Rebecca Thornton. The name hit Carrie like a physical blow. Derek had been married before. In 3 years of dating and 2 years of marriage, he'd never mentioned it, never hinted at it, never let slip a single word about a previous wife. When? He was 23, fresh out of college. They eloped in Las Vegas. I didn't even know about the marriage until it was over. What happened to her? Grace's face contorted with something that looked like shame, like guilt, like the weight of 15 years of silence finally becoming too heavy to bear. She disappeared, 14 months after they married, just vanished one day. No divorce papers, no forwarding address, no goodbye. Derek came home from work and she was gone. What did he say happened? He said she ran off with another man, said she'd been cheating on him for months, said she was unstable, mentally ill, not worth trying to find. He seemed almost relieved, actually. Said he was better off without her. And you believed him. I believed him. Again. Grace's voice broke completely. I always believed him. Because he was my son. Because I couldn't accept that I'd raised a monster. Because it was easier to think Rebecca was crazy than to think Derek had done something to make her run. The baby monitor crackled. Elizabeth stirred in her crib, made a small sound, then settled back into sleep. The green light continued to glow steadily. I found her, Grace said. Month. After what Derek did to you, I couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca, about Sarah, about all the things I'd chosen not to see. So I hired a private investigator. Where is she? Arizona, Tucson. She's been living under a different name for 15 years. Changed her appearance, changed her career, changed everything about herself so Derek wouldn't find her. Grace reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. I went to see her myself, flew out there 2 weeks ago, sat in her kitchen and listened to her tell me what my son really did. She handed the folder to Carrie. Derek didn't cheat on her, didn't leave her, didn't do anything she claimed as grounds for ending the marriage. He tried to kill her, 3 times in 14 months. Carrie opened the folder with numb fingers. Police reports, medical records, photographs of injuries, a detailed timeline of abuse that made her stomach churn. The first incident happened 3 months into the marriage. Derek pushed Rebecca down a flight of stairs. She broke her wrist and sprained her ankle. He apologized profusely, said he'd lost his temper, said it would never happen again, said he loved her more than anything in the world. The second incident happened 7 months in. Derek held Rebecca's head underwater in the bathtub until she nearly drowned. She fought her way free, gasping and choking, and he stood there watching her with cold, curious eyes. He said he'd been playing, said she was overreacting, said if she told anyone they'd think she was crazy. The third incident happened at 13 months. Derek put his hands around Rebecca's throat and squeezed until she lost consciousness. When she woke up, he was standing over her, calm and composed, and he said words that had haunted her for 15 years. If you ever try to leave me, I'll kill you, and I'll make it look like an accident. No one will ever know. No one will ever believe you. Because I'm the good guy, I'm always the good guy. She believed him. She ran the next day, changed her name, changed her appearance, changed everything. She'd been hiding ever since. She thought she was the only one, Grace said, her voice raw with grief. All these years, she thought no one would ever believe her. She thought Derek had gotten away with it and would keep getting away with it forever. Carrie stared at the photographs in the folder. Bruises on Rebecca's wrists, marks on her throat, the hollow, haunted look in her eyes. This could have been her. This would have been her if the cold hadn't woken her up, if the baby hadn't kicked her into consciousness, if luck and fate and the will to survive hadn't conspired to save her life. "Why are you telling me this?" Carrie asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands were trembling. Grace looked up, met her eyes for the first time since she'd arrived. "Because I failed every woman my son has ever hurt. I believed his lies, made excuses for his behavior, defended him when I should have been protecting his victims. I was his mother, and I chose to be blind because being blind was easier than facing the truth." She stood, unsteady on her feet, old and broken, and finally ready to do the right thing. "I'm going to testify at the trial, against my own son, for you, for Rebecca, for Sarah, for every woman he might have hurt in the future if someone doesn't stop him." Carrie rose too, faced the woman who had raised the man who tried to kill her. "Why now? Why, after all these years of denial, are you willing to see the truth?" Grace's face crumpled. "Because I saw Elizabeth's photo in the news coverage. Your daughter, my granddaughter. And I realized that if your heating system hadn't woken you up, that baby would be dead. Derek would have killed his own daughter, and I would have spent the rest of my life defending him, making excuses, refusing to see what was right in front of my face." She moved toward the door, paused with her hand on the knob. "Rebecca's contact information is in the folder. She wants to testify. She's been waiting 15 years for someone to believe her, for someone to stop Derek before he hurts anyone else." Grace opened the door, stepped into the hallway, turned back one last time. "I know you can never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I hope you can believe that I'm sorry, that I wish I'd listened to my instincts 20 years ago, that I wish I'd been brave enough to see the monster behind my son's smile." She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Carrie stood in the silence of her apartment, holding the folder full of evidence against her husband, listening to her daughter breathe through the baby monitor, processing the fact that she wasn't Derek's first victim, that there was a pattern stretching back decades, that somewhere in Arizona, a woman had been living in fear for 15 years because no one had believed her. She sat down on the couch, opened the folder again, read every document, studied every photograph, absorbed every detail of Derek's long history of violence against women who trusted him. Then she picked up her phone and dialed the number written on the first page. Rebecca Thornton answered on the third ring. Her voice was cautious, guarded, the voice of a woman who had learned to trust no one. "This is Caroline Mitchell," Carrie said, "Derek's second wife. His mother gave me your number." Silence. Long, heavy. Carrie could hear Rebecca breathing on the other end of the line. "I've been waiting for this call for 15 years, Rebecca finally said. They talked for 3 hours. Two women who had survived the same predator. Two women who had looked into the same cold eyes and seen the same emptiness behind them. Rebecca told her story in detail. The courtship that had seemed like a fairy tale. The wedding in Vegas, impulsive and romantic. The slow escalation of control and violence. The terror of living with a man who could smile while hurting you. "He never yelled," Rebecca said. "That was the scariest part. He never raised his voice, never lost control. Even when he was hurting me, he was calm, composed, like it was just another task on his to-do list." Carrie recognized the description. Derek had been the same with her. Always calm, always controlled, even when he was planning her murder. "How did you escape?" "I got lucky. He had a business trip. I had 48 hours to disappear. I packed one bag, cleaned out our joint account, drove to the airport, and bought a ticket to the farthest place I could think of. Changed my name, changed my hair color, started over from nothing." "And you never went to the police?" "I went to the police before I ran. They took my statement, photographed my injuries, and then they told me there wasn't enough evidence, that domestic disputes were complicated, that maybe I should try marriage counseling." Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "I could have pressed charges, could have fought, but I knew Derek. I knew what he was capable of. He would have gotten a good lawyer, would have made me look crazy, would have walked away free, and then found me and finished what he started." "So you ran." "So I ran, and I've been running ever since." Silence fell between them, two women processing shared trauma across 1,000 miles of phone line. "I'm done running," Rebecca said finally. "When Grace came to see me, when she told me what Derek did to you, something changed. I realized that my silence had made me complicit, that by hiding, by staying quiet, I'd allowed him to find another victim, to almost kill another woman. That's not your fault. You were surviving. Maybe, but surviving isn't enough anymore. I want to fight. I want to stand up in that courtroom and tell the world who Derek Mitchell really is. I want to make sure he never hurts anyone again. By the end of the call, they had exchanged numbers and email addresses, made plans to meet in person before the trial, formed an alliance born of shared suffering and mutual understanding. As Carrie hung up the phone, she felt something shift inside her. Something that had been frozen since that January night began to thaw. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. There were other women out there who understood, who believed her, who had survived the same monster. The truth always finds its way to light. Sometimes it just takes longer than we want. Elizabeth woke up from her nap, crying softly through the baby monitor. Carrie went to her, lifted her from the crib, held her close. "We're going to be okay," she whispered into her daughter's hair. "We're going to be more than okay. We're going to make sure Daddy never hurts anyone, ever again." The trial began on a Tuesday in June, the first day of summer, the longest day of the year. Carrie had been preparing for this moment for months, working with prosecutors, reviewing evidence, practicing her testimony until she could deliver it without trembling, without crying, without letting Derek see how much he had hurt her. The courthouse was a massive stone building in downtown Minneapolis, its steps crowded with reporters and camera crews and curious onlookers who had followed the case in the news. Carrie walked through them with her head high, her mother on one side, Meredith on the other. She wore a simple navy dress, professional, composed, nothing that would distract from her words. Elizabeth was safe at home with a trusted babysitter, but Carrie wore her daughter's tiny hospital bracelet around her wrist, hidden under her sleeve. A talisman, a reminder of what she was fighting for, a symbol of the life that had almost been stolen. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, every eye watching as the proceedings began. Derek entered in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles. 6 months in custody had changed him. He'd lost weight. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp beneath pale skin. His eyes, once warm and charming, looked hollow, empty. But when he saw Carrie, something flickered in those eyes. Something that might have been longing, or hatred, or the cold calculation of a predator assessing prey. He mouthed something across the courtroom. "I love you." Or maybe, "I'm sorry." Carrie couldn't tell, didn't care. Vanessa Hartley entered separately, escorted by guards who kept careful distance from her. She was still beautiful, even in prison garb, still composed as if this were a minor inconvenience rather than a trial for attempted murder and conspiracy. Her lawyer had negotiated her testimony against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. The prosecution needed her cooperation to establish the full scope of the conspiracy. But she was still facing decades behind bars for her role in the plot and for the death of Marcus Webb, which investigators had successfully connected to her. The prosecution presented its case over 6 days of meticulous, devastating testimony. Thomas Crawford took the stand first, explaining the technical evidence in terms the jury could understand. The smart home system, the hidden cameras, the IP addresses that traced back to Derek's hotel room. The cloud server registered to Vanessa that contained 4 months of surveillance footage. The defendant's wife had no privacy, Crawford testified. Every moment of her life was being recorded and analyzed. Her schedule, her routines, her habits. Everything she did was being studied to find the perfect moment to kill her. Financial experts followed, documenting Derek's money trail, the life insurance increases, the hidden accounts, the text messages discussing how to divide Carrie's assets after her death. Medical experts explained the effects of hypothermia on pregnant women, showed charts and graphs illustrating how close Carrie had come to death, how close Elizabeth had come to never being born. Another hour, one doctor testified, maybe less. If Mrs. Mitchell hadn't woken up when she did, she and her unborn child would have died. There is no question about that. Meteorologists confirmed the deadly conditions that night, -22 degrees, wind chill bringing it to -40, the kind of cold that killed exposed humans in minutes. Rebecca Thornton took the stand on day 4. She had flown in from Arizona, leaving behind the life she'd built in hiding to finally confront the man who had terrorized her. She looked different from the frightened young woman in those old photographs. Older, stronger, ready. "Tell us about your relationship with Derek Mitchell," the prosecutor said. Rebecca spoke for 2 hours, her voice steady, her eyes never leaving the jury. She told them about the courtship, the wedding, the escalating violence, the terror of living with a man who could smile while hurting you, the night Derek strangled her until she lost consciousness, the threat he'd made when she woke up. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd kill me. He said he'd make it look like an accident. He said no one would believe me because he was the good guy. He was always the good guy. The defense tried to discredit her, called her unstable, questioned her memory, suggested she was exaggerating, seeking attention, pursuing a vendetta against a man who had simply grown apart from her. Rebecca didn't break. "I have medical records documenting my injuries," she said calmly. "I have police reports from when I tried to press charges. I have 15 years of therapy bills from trying to recover from what he did to me. You can call me unstable if you want, but the evidence doesn't lie." The defense attorney had no response to that. Grace Mitchell testified on day 5. The courtroom fell silent when she took the stand. A mother testifying against her own son. The ultimate betrayal, some might say, or the ultimate act of courage. Grace looked old, broken, but her voice was steady as she told the jury about Derek's childhood, the warning signs, the incidents she'd explained away, the pattern of behavior she'd refused to acknowledge. "I failed every woman my son has ever hurt," Grace said. "I believed his lies because I wanted to believe them, because accepting the truth meant accepting that I had raised a monster. But I can't stay silent anymore. I can't let him hurt anyone else." Derek stared at his mother with pure hatred while she testified. His jaw clenched, his shackled hand balled into fists. When the defense attorney asked Grace if she was testifying out of guilt, she shook her head. "I'm testifying because I finally understand what my son is, and because the woman he tried to kill deserved better than my silence. All his victims deserve better." Carrie took the stand on day 6, the final witness for the prosecution. She'd practiced her testimony 100 times, with the prosecutors, with Meredith, with her mother, with her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She knew every word she was going to say. But nothing could truly prepare her for this moment, for facing Derek across a courtroom, for telling their story to a room full of strangers who would decide his fate. The prosecutor guided her through the chronology, meeting Derek at a charity gala, the whirlwind romance that felt like a fairy tale, the wedding that seemed like the beginning of everything she'd ever wanted. "We were so happy," Carrie said, "or at least I thought we were. He was charming and attentive, and he made me feel like I was the center of his world. I had no idea it was all an act." She told him about the pregnancy, the joy of finding out she was going to be a mother, Derek's enthusiasm for installing the smart home system to keep their family safe. He said he wanted to be able to check on the baby from anywhere, make sure the temperature was right, make sure the doors were locked. He said it was about protecting our family. Her voice hardened. What he didn't tell me was that he'd installed hidden cameras in our bedroom and bathroom, that his mistress was watching me every day, that they were using the system to plan my murder. She told him about waking up freezing in the middle of the night, the deleted heating system, the desperate call to 911, the hospital, the discovery of the affair, the text messages documenting the conspiracy. "They planned my death for months," Carrie said, discussed it casually, like they were planning a vacation. "They picked the coldest weekend of the year because it would maximize their chances. They talked about my life insurance money and what they would do with it after I was gone." She looked directly at Derek for the first time since taking the stand. "And the whole time you smiled at me, kissed me, told me you loved me, put your hand on my belly and felt our daughter kick and acted like you cared whether she lived or died." Derek's face was unreadable, stone, empty. "I trusted you," Carrie said. Her voice didn't waver. "I trusted you with everything. and you used that trust to try to kill me and our child. On the defense attorney cross-examined her for 2 hours, tried every tactic to discredit her testimony, suggested she was exaggerating, suggested she might have deleted the heating system herself, suggested the whole thing was an elaborate scheme to frame her husband for a crime he didn't commit. Carrie answered every question calmly, directly, without anger or tears. When the attorney suggested she might have invented the whole story for attention, she looked at him with something that might have been pity. "I was 7 months pregnant," she said, "in negative 22-degree weather. My daughter's heart rate was irregular from the cold by the time the paramedics arrived. If I wanted attention, Mr. Harrison, I would have posted something on social media. I wouldn't have risked my child's life." The jury laughed. The defense attorney didn't. During a recess, Carrie went to the bathroom, stood at the sink, looked at her reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. She barely recognized herself. Not worse, different, harder, stronger. The soft woman who had believed in fairy tales and happily ever after was gone. In her place was someone who had survived being hunted by the person who promised to love her. Someone who had faced a killer and lived to tell the story. She was okay with that. She washed her hands, straightened her dress, walked back into the courtroom with her head held high. The verdict came on day 7. The judge called the court to order. The jury filed in. The foreman stood with a piece of paper in his hands. Carrie held her mother's hand, felt Meredith's shoulder pressed against hers, kept her eyes on the jury foreman. In the matter of the state versus Derek Allen Mitchell, on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, we the jury find the defendant, a pause that lasted forever, guilty. The word echoed through the courtroom. Carrie felt tears prick her eyes but didn't let them fall. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of stalking in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of assault in the second degree, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty, 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 guilty. Derek's face went pale. His shackled hands gripped the edge of the defense table. The verdict for Vanessa Hartley came next. Guilty on all charges, plus additional charges related to the death of Marcus Webb, whose case had been reopened based on evidence discovered during the investigation. Life without parole. She showed no emotion, just stared straight ahead as if the verdict had nothing to do with her. The sentencing hearing followed immediately. The judge had already reviewed the evidence, already made his decision. "Derek Allen Mitchell," the judge said, "you have been found guilty of one of the most calculated, cold-blooded crimes this court has ever seen. You spent months planning the murder of your pregnant wife. You installed cameras to spy on her. You increased her life insurance. You chose the coldest night of the year to ensure she would freeze to death in her own home." Derek said nothing, just stared at the table in front of him. "Worse, this was not your first offense. Evidence presented at trial shows a pattern of violence against women stretching back 2 decades. You have left a trail of victims who were too afraid or too traumatized to seek justice until now." The judge paused. "This court sentences you to 32 years in federal prison. You will not be eligible for parole for 25 years. And when you do become eligible, I sincerely hope the parole board remembers what you tried to do to your wife and unborn child." Derek broke. He sobbed, begged for mercy, talked about his daughter, his innocent daughter who needed her father, who deserved to know her father, who would grow up without him because of this terrible misunderstanding. Carrie stood up. She hadn't planned to speak. The prosecutors had told her the sentencing was over, that there was nothing more she needed to do. But the words came anyway, rising up from somewhere deep inside her, demanding to be heard. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" The judge considered for a moment, then nodded. Carrie stepped forward, faced Derek for the last time. "You talk about your daughter," she said. Her voice was steady, strong. "You talk about how she needs her father, how she deserves to know you." She let the words hang in the air. "But let me tell you about your daughter, Elizabeth Grace Mitchell. She was born 3 weeks after you were arrested, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect in every way." Derek's tears kept falling. Real tears or crocodile tears, Carrie couldn't tell. She will never know you. She will never visit you in prison. She will never hear your voice or feel your arms around her or believe your lies. Because you don't deserve to know her. You gave up that right when you decided to kill her before she was born. Carrie's voice hardened. You talk about her like she's your daughter, but she's not. She's my daughter. Mine. I carried her. I protected her. I kept her alive when you tried to freeze us both to death. And I will raise her to be everything you're not. Kind, honest, incapable of the kind of cruelty that comes so naturally to you. She took a breath. So don't sit there crying about your daughter. Don't use her as a prop for sympathy. Don't pretend you ever cared about her for a single second. Because I know the truth. I read the text messages. I know you called our baby a complication. I know you wanted her dead along with me. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I hope you spend every day of your sentence thinking about what you've lost. Not me. I was never really yours, but Elizabeth. The daughter you'll never know, the grandchildren you'll never meet, the future you destroyed with your own choices. She turned to the judge. That's all I have to say, Your Honor. The judge nodded. The court appreciates your statement, Mrs. Mitchell, and the court hopes you and your daughter find the peace and happiness you deserve. The guards led Derek away. He tried to look back at Carrie one more time, but she had already turned away. Already dismissed him from her life forever. Outside the courthouse, the sun was setting. June warmth on her skin, the longest day of the year fading into evening. Meredith was beside her mother wiping tears from her eyes. Rebecca Thornton, who had flown back to see the verdict delivered. Grace Mitchell, who had watched her son led away in chains and somehow found the strength to stay standing. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. The whole world wanted a piece of this moment. Carrie ignored them all. She pulled out her phone and took a picture. Not of the reporters, not of the courthouse, not of the people around her, just the sunset, orange and gold and pink streaking across the Minneapolis skyline. The most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Why that? Meredith asked. Because I want to remember this moment. Not the verdict, not the trial, not his face when they led him away. Just this, being outside, being warm, being alive, being surrounded by people who love me. She looked at the women around her. Her mother, who had driven through a snowstorm to save her life. Meredith, who had kept her business running and never once doubted her. Rebecca, who had finally found the courage to face her abuser. Grace, who had chosen truth over blood. We did it, Carrie said, all of us. Together. Rebecca nodded, tears streaming down her face. 15 years. 15 years I waited for someone to believe me. And now he can't hurt anyone else, Carrie finished, ever again. They stood together in the fading light, survivors, warriors, women who had faced a monster and won. 1 year later, Elizabeth was 14 months old, walking, babbling, saying mama with increasing frequency and joy, laughing at peekaboo, dancing to music only she could hear, perfect in every way. The apartment was filled with light. Morning sunshine streamed through the big windows Carrie had chosen so carefully, warming the hardwood floors, making the whole space glow golden. Carrie's interior design business had doubled in the past year. She'd developed a specialty that felt meaningful. Safe homes. Security consulting alongside design. Helping people create spaces that were beautiful and protected. Teaching them what to look for. How to feel secure without feeling paranoid. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman whose smart home had nearly killed her was now an expert on home safety. But she'd learned things the hard way that other people shouldn't have to learn at all. If she could help even one family avoid what she'd gone through, it was worth it. She sat at her kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching Elizabeth play with blocks on the floor. The morning sun caught her daughter's hair, turning it gold. There was a man in her life now, James, a friend of her mother's from church. He'd started coming around about 6 months ago, brought her coffee on Saturday mornings, stayed to play with Elizabeth, made himself quietly, gently, carefully indispensable. He understood her past without needing her to explain it over and over. He didn't push, didn't pressure, didn't try to rush her healing on his timeline. He just showed up, consistently, reliably, the kind of man Derek had only pretended to be. She didn't know if it would become love. Not yet. But she was open to the possibility in a way she hadn't been a year ago. Open to the idea that not everyone who seemed good was wearing a mask, that some people were exactly what they appeared to be. The doorbell rang. Carrie opened it to find a delivery driver holding a package. She signed for it, brought it inside, opened it at the kitchen table while Elizabeth continued playing with her blocks. Inside was a photo book she'd ordered weeks ago. Pictures from Elizabeth's first year, first smile, first tooth, first steps, first birthday, surrounded by balloons and cake and people who loved her. Carrie sat on the couch and flipped through the pages slowly. Tears pricked her eyes but didn't fall. Happy tears. Grateful tears. There was a photo of Elizabeth meeting Rebecca for the first time. The older woman holding the baby with tears streaming down her face. "She's beautiful," Rebecca had said. "She's so beautiful and so alive, and she's proof that he didn't win. He didn't destroy everything." There was a photo of Elizabeth with Grace, Derek's mother. They'd built an unlikely relationship over the past year. Grace had testified against her son, had helped put him in prison, and now she was trying to be a grandmother to the grandchild he tried to kill. It was complicated, messy, but it was honest, which was more than Derek had ever been. There was a photo of Elizabeth with Meredith, who had officially become Aunt Mir and took her duties very seriously. Trips to the zoo, silly songs, more stuffed animals than any child could possibly need. There was a photo of Elizabeth with Donna, Carrie's mother, who had been there through everything. The hospital, the trial, the sleepless nights, the slow, painful process of rebuilding a life from ashes. On the last page, Carrie had added one more photo, a picture of herself, 7 months pregnant, in the hospital bed the day after she'd almost died, looking terrified, looking broken, looking like a woman whose world had just shattered into a million pieces. Below it, she'd written in careful handwriting, "This is where we started. Look how far we've come." Elizabeth toddled over, wanting to see what Mama was looking at. Carrie lifted her onto the couch and showed her the photos. "That's you," she said, pointing to an ultrasound image. "Before you were born, when you were still inside me, keeping me company on the hardest night of my life." Elizabeth grabbed at the page with chubby fingers, said something that might have been baby or might have been just babbling. "And that's me. On a very hard day, the day everything changed. The day I found out the truth about a lot of things." She kissed her daughter's head, smelled baby shampoo and sunshine and hope. "But we're okay now. We're more than okay. We're strong, we're loved, we're safe, and we're going to have the most beautiful life together." Elizabeth laughed, that pure, joyful baby laugh that never failed to make everything better. The heating system in their apartment was manual, a simple dial on the wall, nothing smart, nothing connected, nothing that could be hacked or deleted or used as a weapon. Some things didn't need to be smart, they just needed to work. Carrie closed the photo book and hugged her daughter close. Outside the window, the summer sun was shining, birds were singing. The world was full of possibility. She thought about the woman she'd been a year and a half ago, the woman who had trusted without question, who had believed in fairy tales, who had been blind to the monster sleeping beside her. That woman was gone, and in her place was someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. "I am not a victim. I am not just a survivor. I am a woman who walked through fire and came out holding her daughter. That's all I need to be." The story had begun with cold, deadly, terrifying, almost fatal cold. It ended with warmth, the warmth of sunshine through windows, the warmth of her daughter in her arms, the warmth of a life rebuilt from ashes, the warmth of love that was real, not performed. She had started alone, freezing, almost dead. She ended surrounded by people who loved her, safe in a home she had created, raising a daughter who would never know her father's cruelty. And that, she realized, was the best revenge of all. Not hate, not bitterness, not spending her life consumed by what Derek had done. Just living, just thriving, just being genuinely, completely, unapologetically happy. Derek would spend the next 25 years in a cell knowing that his wife and daughter were out there somewhere, living the life he'd tried to steal from them. That was his punishment, knowing he'd failed, knowing they'd won, knowing that all his careful planning and cold calculation had come to nothing. Carrie looked out the window at the summer day, at the blue sky and green trees and the world full of possibility. "Come on, baby girl," she said to Elizabeth. "Let's go to the park. It's too beautiful to stay inside." She gathered the diaper bag, put Elizabeth in the stroller, stepped out into the sunshine. The air was warm, the sky was clear. And somewhere in a federal prison 500 miles away, Derek Mitchell was staring at concrete walls, knowing he would never feel the sun on his face as a free man again. Carrie smiled and walked forward into her beautiful, bright, well-deserved future. And that's where Caroline's story ends. Not with bitterness, not with hate, but with sunshine streaming through her windows, with her daughter laughing in her arms, with a future she built from the ashes of everything Derek tried to destroy. She walked through fire, and she came out holding her baby girl. If this story moved you, if you felt Caroline's fear and her strength and her triumph, I'd love for you to hit that like button. It only takes a second, but it means the world to me. It tells me you want more stories like this. Stories about women who refuse to be victims, who fight back, who win. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a new story. I post new content every week. And trust me, the stories coming next are just as powerful as this one. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Did you see the twist coming? What would you have done in Caroline's shoes? I read every single comment and I love hearing from you. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's going through something hard. Someone who needs to know that survival is possible. That starting over is possible. That happiness after heartbreak is possible. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for being part of this community. And thank you for believing in stories that remind us how strong we really are. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And remember, you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. See you in the next one.